7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. T minus 2 minutes. T minus 1 minute. T minus 50 seconds.
My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens when you rely on the internet to broadcast. It's a perilous thing. I apologize. We'll get this thing down. I don't even know if anybody is watching live right now, but I am live, as you can see by my flusteredness. And can you hear my background music? That's just all I want to know. Basically, what's happening here, and if you're going to watch this on its video replay instead of live, what happened was my internet, I believe, went down, and went down across the board because my background music is from the internet. It went down. So right when we're about to go live, the internet goes down. And like I said, when you're reliant on the internet for virtually everything in your life now, banking, broadcasting live, booking a reservation to eat dinner. Excuse me just a second here as I adjust my chair. We're an internet society now, and it just reminds you of how precarious things would be if one of our adversaries, China, for example, would set off some sort of electromagnetic device that wipes out all of our internet, all of our Wi-Fi, all of our means of communication. I mean, think about how many phones now are tethered to the internet or cell service. And if an enemy can drop some sort of neutralizing electronic weapon that wipes that out, boy, we're in big trouble. As Rush used to say, hubba, hubba, hubba. Thank you for joining me, and maybe, I'm glad Judy Thomas is out there. Judy, I'm glad you found me. I apologize. There's a phantom live report on YouTube that I will eliminate in due time, within an hour or so. So that one was like about 7 seconds long, and then the internet went out. So my apologies. That's all I can say. It's a process, and it's a process we're going to try and make as smooth as possible. It's not like the federal government and its process. As Elon Musk likes to point out, the federal government is all about process and not about outcomes. Well, I care about outcomes. I use the process to get the outcomes. And so here we are live in a double secret, semi-secret location somewhere in the continental United States where it is beautiful out right now. Should be out on the golf course, but I've got too many other things going on, including talking to you about what's going on in Washington, D.C. Pennies from Heaven is clamoring in my brain right now, even though I have the background music on. Pennies from Heaven. Donald Trump wants to, or has issued an order, President Trump has issued an order to stop minting pennies. And the reason is because it costs $3.96 to print 1 cent. Now, to a business person like Donald Trump, or to anybody with a brain like myself, that doesn't make any sense. We're spending almost 4 cents to print 1 cent. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean we're eliminating the penny. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, Article 2 branch, doesn't have the authority to eliminate pennies. It's Congress that is vested with the authority to print money in this country, and so Congress is going to have to deal with this. What do? I don't want to eliminate the penny, but if it costs 4 cents, almost 4 cents, to mint a penny, which is not mostly copper anymore, it's mostly zinc. I think it's like 95% zinc. What is the point? No, we can't just suddenly tell businesses don't use pennies anymore, and we can't pull the plug on it, and they would become scarce, right? Everybody would hoard pennies. I mean, I was thinking in the back of my mind, start hoarding pennies. I used to have a penny collection. I was a penny collector. And then one day I looked at all the pennies and I said, what in the heck am I doing with all these pennies? I used to keep in an old milk bottle. My grandfather was a dairy person in Central California back in the day. And it was Cloverleaf Dairy, which is no longer in existence. And I have all these old milk bottles, and what do you do with milk bottles? Well, I filled some of them with white paint, and they look pretty cool. And I filled some of them with pennies. And I looked at the pennies, and I said, I'm getting rid of these pennies. So I brought in one of those change machines, and probably should have kept them for today, which, who knows, maybe we're going to eliminate the penny in the long run. But just to be clear, Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to eliminate printing the penny. He just paused it, told the Treasury Department to put a cork in it, at least for now, and let's evaluate the situation since it shouldn't cost $4 or 4 cents to print 1 cent. That doesn't it's mind-boggling. But this is the kind of stuff that maybe Elon Musk uncovered that. I don't know. These people on the left are going crazy over Elon Musk. First, it's so funny, the evolution of Elon Musk with the radical left Marxists. They were in love with him. He made an electric car. Oh, look at this. Everybody buy a Tesla. Now, I don't know what it's like to drive around in California with a Tesla. I think these people are almost ashamed of driving in a Tesla. And maybe they're going to unload it and get maybe a Chinese electric car instead. Because Elon Musk is now enemy number 1 by the radical Marxist left, especially those who live in California. They hate Elon Musk now. So he's gone from hero to, what's he doing? He bought X, or he bought Twitter, and turned it into X, and is for free speech. Something's wrong here. We don't want free speech on Twitter. We want to have clamped down speech on conservatives the way it's always been. And so he opened it up. That was strike 1. Strike 2 was embracing the free markets and free speech. And then strike 3, of course, was his association with Donald Trump and now the DOGE, whatever, how the heck they pronounce it. Oh, and Donald Trump also signed an executive order I wish he would, eliminating paper straws. Speaking of California, when you go and you order a drink and there's a straw sticking out of it. What you learn to do in California, because it's all paper straws now, is you learn to take it out immediately, rest it on top or on the side or something, and then stick it in when you need it. Because what happens with these paper straws is they start disintegrating. They're absolutely useless after about 2 or 3 sips. It's just so mind-boggling stupid. So Donald Trump's executive order doesn't tell California what to do with their straws. I'll tell California what to do with their straws. It says, hey, in the federal government, use plastic. Have a brain, use plastic straws. And if you're a federal contractor, we encourage you to use plastic straws. It's just mind-boggling. We're at the stage right now. And I think of these people who are going apoplectic. I was just listening to CNBC, and these people are going crazy over Donald Trump, what he's doing overall, and what Elon Musk is trying to do, which is to reduce the size and scope of government by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's so funny to hear somebody like Chuck Schumer come out and say, oh yeah, we know there's waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. No big deal. We've always known that. Okay, Chucky, so why didn't you do anything about it? Because he doesn't want to do anything about it, because as Elon Musk unravels this incredibly entangled layer upon layer ball of federal government string, the demons are coming out. For example, this $50 million in condoms being sent to Gaza. So the mainstream media yesterday, there's an impromptu news conference in the Oval Office, and it was hilarious because Elon had his son there. I guess Elon, I read a book by Peter Thiel, who was his partner when he started up PayPal. Elon Musk wanted to name PayPal X. So Elon Musk has an affinity toward X, space X, X from Twitter, right? Well, his son, I don't know if it's his nickname, is X. And so X, he's probably 4 or 5 years old, and he was in the Oval Office with Elon Musk, his dad, and Donald Trump, and Elon's standing off to the right, and he's got X, whatever his real name is, his son, on his shoulders, and all of a sudden the son starts putting his fingers in Dad's ears. Typical parent, stop it, kind of thing. But of course, the mainstream media is in there, and they have the gotcha question for Elon. Well, we did some fact checking. Here we go, fact checking, and we found out that the $50 million in condoms sent to Gaza was Gaza, Mozambique. What do you have to say about that, Elon? And Elon came up with the perfect answer, which is what I would say. Why are we sending $50 million in condoms anywhere? Oh, but it's to stop the spread of AIDS. Okay. You know what we used to do in this country before the federal government became this behemoth, before the 17th Amendment, the 16th Amendment, and the creation of income tax? When government was running lean on, what did it run on? Tariffs, because we didn't have an income tax. So prior to 1913, we were lean and we were mean, and we got along without an income tax. And I can't remember why I was going down this road, but it had to do with Elon and the helping other countries and stopping the spread of AIDS. What we did before 1913, more or less, was if you want to stop the spread of AIDS and you want to go buy a bunch of condoms and give it to Mozambique, Gaza, Mozambique, or whatever country in Africa Gaza is, the other Gaza, then a church can go do it, or a nonprofit can go do it. Go knock your heart out. Go buy all the condoms you want, and then do your mission to Africa. The federal government shouldn't be in the business, in my opinion, the federal government shouldn't be in the business of giving anything free to anyone, any country, and frankly, anything free to any American. That's not the function of the federal government. The function of the federal government, if you read the United States Constitution, is very narrow, very limited. It certainly isn't to be having a Department of Education or a Department of Energy or an EPA or even a DOJ or an FBI and a CIA. That doesn't exist in the federal Constitution. So if for example, if the Ukraine, and I'm going to get to your emails in just a minute, and Judy, why don't you send me a question if you got a question, like how good my hair looks or something. I finally found, I think maybe I found a barber that can follow directions. Basically what I told him was, I want a mini mullet. And he looked at me. I said, no, I'm not stuck in the 80s, even though I am. This is kind of the way I want my haircut, okay? Just think mini mullet. But my view is, if we as a country feel obligated, which we shouldn't, to help Ukraine, and you want to give them money, fine. It's not a gift, it's a loan. Why are we gifting money to any country, any entity on the planet? And that includes Americans. Why are we using the federal government as some sort of free bank for various countries and various people and various entities in this world? It makes no sense to me. If Ukraine wants to borrow $500 billion to fund its war, that's fine. We'll give you, low interest rate of maybe about, say maybe 3-4%. Make it payable over 10 years, maybe 15 at the most, like a 15-year mortgage, and then secure it. Well, how are you going to secure it, Graham? Secure it against whatever value the Ukraine has, which I don't know, other than the rare earth minerals. Secure it against the rare earth minerals. Give us a plot of land, give us a deed, and secure the loan. That's what we ought to be doing. We ought to be, if you're going to give France money, fine. Give it to them on low interest. You need France? Great, wonderful. We'll loan you money. We have the ability to loan you money. You're going to pay back. I'm not talking bonds. I'm talking loaning money. I don't even know if that's a function of the federal government, to be quite honest. But it could be a way of making money, not unlike a tariff. Could be a way of making money on an interest, on a loan, that doesn't involve taxing the American people. Think about it. Think about all the billions, the hundreds of billions of dollars that we just give away, and we convert those gifts into a low-interest loan. Same thing with the UN, by the way. Frankly, NATO ought to function that way. It's debatable. You could consider NATO as part of a Defense Department expenditure if we want to stay in NATO, which I think we probably do. Okay, fine, maybe that's a little bit different. But if you're a country with your hand out and you want money, here's $100 billion, Panama, and here's your interest rate, and we're going to secure it against the canal. I don't know, it makes sense to me. I'm going to, on this program, talk about the YouGov poll. And I asked questions in if you didn't get my email, shame on you. Sign up at grahamledger.com for my email, my news. It's a newsletter, sort of. It's an informational. I do different things with it. The bottom line is, in the latest email that I sent out through Substack, I had all the YouGov questions in there because I want your response. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people responding, which is good. And if you want to get a hold of me now, you can chat as Judy is doing on YouTube live. And again, I screwed it up. This is the second of two YouTube inputs for today, for February 12th, 2025. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's just is what it is because it got screwed up, and I apologize for that. You can reach me on my email, which I will check right now, which is grahamledger411 at gmail.com, grahamledger411 at gmail.com. So what Donald Trump is doing, forget about Elon Musk. Elon's going to be there until, I think, 4th of July next year. And, God bless him for doing his work. But what Donald Trump is doing is, by definition, what our government is about. Our government is about consent of the governed. Donald Trump is trying to return our federal government to that notion of consent of the governed. Elon was pointing out yesterday during this impromptu news conference that they discovered at the Social Security Administration so far, first of all, they keep files in some cave in Pennsylvania. I mean, what kind of insanity is that? Yeah, there's some sort of cave in Pennsylvania. The Social Security Administration keeps files in there. I mean, it's just cuckoo, but it's the federal government. But he said that they found 150-year-olds, it was plural, 150-year-olds receiving Social Security. 150-year-olds receiving Social Security. Let that sink in for just a second as I have a sip of my, this is an Arnold Palmer. Excuse me, no ice. Donald Trump is returning this country to the notion, the theory, the bedrock foundation of consent of the governed. The people of this country voted for Donald Trump to do exactly what he is doing. That is the consent of the governed. Some rogue FBI agent misleading a FISA judge, which has happened, and we know that it's happened multiple times. That is not consent of the governed. Some rogue IRS agent flagging a certain tax return for audit because they know that that person is a MAGA supporter. That is not consent of the governed. Layer upon layer upon layer of the EPA and the Energy Department and all of these agencies that go out and make rules that are tantamount to laws, that is not consent of the governed, and it needs to stop. But Donald Trump cannot do this alone, and I want to get to this. He's got to have Congress involved. We have a window here of fewer than 2 years now. We have 23 months or so. Okay? Because we don't know what's going to happen in 2026. You could lose control of the House or the Senate. You don't know. So we have 23 months to solidify in perpetuity changes in the federal government, whether it's eliminating the Department of Education or making English as the official language, or what I'm going to get to in just a minute. But we are witnessing a paradigm shift. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime moment that we ought to really pay attention to. And whatever sources for news you use, I would be looking at it multiple times a day, because news is changing so fast, and Donald Trump is moving at warp speed, that it's often hard for even me to keep up. So I'm constantly checking my news cycle. I look at the Gateway Pundit, among other. I have on Telegram, I have a feed. I look at, what else do I look at? Zero Hedge, and then a couple of others. But I also look at the enemy as well, and CNN, because I want to know what they're doing. But we are witnessing a paradigm shift in thinking. This is what the media has such trouble with, and the Marxists in California and Illinois and in Washington and in Oregon and in New York. They just can't wrap their heads around Elon Musk working on behalf of Donald Trump, who Elon Musk is an employee, he's just not getting paid, but he's an employee of the federal government. They can't wrap their head around the fact that this guy is going in there with a magnifying glass and looking and turning over stones and finding out what's underneath. And there is a horrible underbelly. Public servants, Elon is finding, public servants who are suddenly worth $30 million. How is that possible legally? And he said, if it's because they're investing in the stock market, then we need to know whatever methods they're using so we can do the same. Right. Anybody believe that? It's very difficult for them, the radical left, to understand what's happening here. And what's happening here is effectively Donald Trump is attempting to pull the government back to where it was prior to 1913. That's what's happening here. To peel back the layers of the onion, not just to expose the inner core of this onion, but to make the onion smaller. peel back the layers and get rid of them for good. And so the left is going to go kicking and screaming on this. They're going to fight it every step of the way, because as we peel it back, we're going to expose them as the frauds that they are, and the fact that they're ripping us off, the American people, and the fact that they're stealing from us, and the fact that they're criminals. We're going to find a lot of criminal activity in there. And when Elon investigates these 150-year-olds and traces where those checks are going, somebody needs to go to jail for a long time. And it needs to be very public about it. And then Elon traces back these multi-millionaire public servants and finds out, well, I guess it was some sort of contract given to the person himself or herself. Again, heads need to roll. We're just trying to reduce the size and scope of government, and it needs to be done permanently. But, again, the permanent part cannot be done by Donald Trump and Elon Musk alone. Here's Donald Trump. He wrote this last night. Billions of dollars of fraud, waste, and abuse have already been found in the investigation of our completely incompetently run government. Now certain activists and highly political judges want us to slow down or stop. Losing this momentum will be very detrimental to finding the truth, which is turning out to be a disaster for those involved in running our government. Much left to find, no excuses. Okay. I have decided that my suggestion that the Congress getting involved here and creating these expedited courts is probably the only way to make this work. Congress, under Article 3, not under Article 1, under Article 3 of the Constitution, has the power to create inferior courts. Article 3 reads, "The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish." So Article 3 effectively is just a Supreme Court. Meaning, any inferior courts below courts of the Supreme Court is the creation of Congress. So my question to Speaker Johnson and the Republican leadership is, where in the hell have you been for the last 3 months as we were ramping up to the Trump administration? We all saw this coming, right? We all saw this headline. Oh, by the way, I skipped over a story, and I'll get to that headline. The Elon Musk team finds that FEMA spent $59 million last week to luxury New York City hotels for illegals. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that should make your blood boil. Absolutely, your blood should boil. And yeah, I think, I've always thought FEMA is a joke anyway. Why do you need the federal government to take money from the states only to give it back to the states in a disaster? It makes no sense. If you want to have a FEMA, some sort of version of FEMA in Illinois, knock your heart out, Pritzker. You want to do it in California, big Mr. Slick Hair? Make your own FEMA. But with the caveat in knowing that the federal government is not taking all this money from the states anymore. In other words, the money is staying in those states for use to build a FEMA department. Eliminate FEMA. Forget about it. You don't need FEMA. If a state needs an emergency loan because California is collapsing, they need an emergency loan, not a bailout, a loan, then again, same thing. We'll give you a sweet interest rate, but it's a loan, California, and you will pay it back, and we will secure it with the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, back to the other headline. I was talking about judges. I'm sorry to I swerved back and forth here, but I'll reset here. The Congress has the authority to mint judges, okay? So, Speaker Johnson, are you reading these headlines? Just in, Biden-appointed judge blocks Trump's move to cut NIH funding. Remember NIH and Dr. Fauci? he's trying to cut there. Here's another headline. Corrupt Obama judge Amy Bergman Jackson, remember her, rules in favor of fired Biden holdover, allows him to keep his job. This is the guy in the Department of Justice who helped try and put Donald Trump in jail. And Donald Trump can't get rid of him? More legal insanity. Obama judge blocks Trump administration from sending Venezuelan illegals to Guantanamo Bay. Donald Trump is sending these illegals to Gitmo for a purpose. It's not to house them forever. It's a staging facility to get them the hell out of our continental United States. Put them in Cuba. It's better for them anyway. Okay, so my point is very simply, Speaker Johnson, Republican leadership, create expedited courts. You can do this. It's under your Article 1 power. Create expedited federal courts with a single magistrate appointed by the president in charge of these expedited courts, and make them regional. Put a couple judges down by the border. Put a couple in the West Coast. Put a couple down south. Put a couple in, around Chicago, and then a couple in the D.C. area. And the single magistrate that the president will appoint among these judges that they will mint is in charge of picking off the cases and saying, here, expedite it. Expedite it here. It's a D.C. case, expedite it here. Oh, you got an illegal who's suing, so he's not being deported? Oh, down there in Texas, you're going to expedite this. And I'm talking television kind of court, where you come in there, or small claims court. You come in there, judge says, what's your case? I read your brief. Tell me more. I'm going to answer these questions, okay? Your side, answer these questions. I read your brief, blah, blah. Okay, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to take a few minutes and look at a couple of things and then render a decision. Comes back out, says, you know what? Illegals don't have rights. Sorry, sir, you're deported. And if you appeal this decision, you got to go right to the Supreme Court. And the same thing with all these other ones. Buddy, you were hired under you're appointed under the previous administration. The new chief executive comes in. He can do whatever he wants. He can fire you. Boom, you're gone. The point is, pull these cases out from under the Obama judges and the Clinton judges and the Biden judges, these biased lawyers dressed in black robes. Don't even let them touch it. Put them in expedited courts. And by the way, this piece of legislation that you would pass creating the expedited courts has an expiration date, and the expiration date is the day that Donald Trump would be 2020, and I have to do the math here, 2029? Is that right? Am my math right? January 19th, 2029? Boy, that sounds so far away. I guess it is. When Donald Trump would leave office. And that's the expiration date. That's the way you got to do this, okay? Federal government, you got to do it. Congress, grow a spine, Speaker Johnson, and it's a no-brainer. It seems crystal clear to me. And I don't have the president's ear, but if I did, I would say, Mr. President, lean into this wet noodle who's the Speaker of the House and tell him to create these courts, set them up in a way that they will pull the cases, whatever case they want, they can pull and expedite it. And then expiration date of when you leave office. No-brainer. Viewer mail. This is David. David writes, number one problem, our borders, particularly the southern border. There's a simple solution. Put active duty military bases along the border with orders to shoot anyone trying to cross without advance approval. I have been arguing for years now to militarize the border. I would go even a step further. I would put landmines and advertise it in every possible language with big signs, just like they do in San Diego. They got signs down along the border in Spanish saying, don't cross the freeway. No kidding. Why you have to have a sign that says don't cross the freeway, I don't know. A side note here, self-deportations and plummeting crossings. So what's happening is exactly what happened in Operation Wetback in 1954. And that is the illegals have gotten the word and they're getting out of here. Vámonos. Vámonos. Back to wherever they came from. Not all of them, but it is a factor. It is happening. Self-deportations, we call it that. And then, of course, the fact that fewer and fewer people are even trying to cross the border is having a wonderfully positive effect on this country. And I'm so sick of hearing these people on CNBC telling me two things. One, that if you shrink the size of government, it's going to hurt the economy. This is a moronic way of thinking. I just wish I could go on those shows. And the other is, well, losing these illegals is going to hurt the economy. Do you know we have a housing shortage in this country? Where do illegals live? They live in houses and apartments. And in some cases, like New York, in luxury hotels. These are all places, except the luxury hotels, I guess, that Americans could be living in. Did you ever think of that? Do you ever think that the housing shortage is exacerbated, not a ton, but a little bit, by illegals? And if the illegals leave, then the housing shortage is going to be alleviated a little bit, maybe significantly, I don't know. The only thing that I am semi-concerned about is the fact that the illegals have a net flow of money going south, wherever their country of origin is, Honduras. And if dollars are not being removed from the economy, is that going to be inflationary? I don't know. I would like to ask Milton Friedman on that. Maybe he would have a counterweight to it, and there probably is. And that would be maybe that if the illegal leaves, along with the money flow, that there'll be an American taking that job, and the American will put that money back into the economy. I think that's probably the Milton Friedman kind of answer. And this headline I love about the border: Trump administration working on deputizing thousands of IRS agents to help ICE round up illegals. You talk about a great use of the IRS. Now there's a great use of the IRS. I'm all for that. This email comes to us from Mark. Don't you think this Gaza thing is just another payment to Jewish elites? I think Donald Trump is serious about Gaza. I think that I don't know that it's going to come to fruition. I think that there's a chance that you risk making a lot of people mad in the Middle East because of this American presence, if you will. But he's not talking about occupying. He's not talking about buying. Israel owns that land. So if Israel says, come on in and develop a Trump Tower and a couple of golf courses, that's usable by anybody. Israelis, what have you. So policing the area would be up to Netanyahu and company. And I don't see any problem with the United States building it up and taking a stake in there. And maybe it does become some sort of target for terrorism. I suppose it could. But there is no Palestine. That is not Palestine. Palestine doesn't exist. That's Israeli territory. And you can go back and you can tell me, oh, but 500 years ago it was Palestine, or 1,000 years ago it was Palestine, or whatever. But whatever. 1,000 years ago we didn't have Alaska. 1,000 years ago the United States didn't exist. No, the Indians had it. So, maybe, but before the Indians there were mongrels here or whoever. Joseph writes, why doesn't Trump declare the FBI and CIA domestic terrorist groups? Because they are and should be shown no mercy. Well, I think there are elements inside these groups, the FBI and the CIA in particular, that are rogue. And the solution here is, number one, cutting down the size and scope of these agencies. Okay, that's number one. It's very important. And number two is term limits. If I could wave a magic wand and change just one thing in Washington, D.C., and I had the ability to change anything I wanted, it would be term limits for all federal employees. Everybody who receives a federal paycheck, whether you are a United States Senator or whether you're a janitor in the halls of Congress, everybody who receives a federal paycheck will be term limited. Now, you've got to think about this. You've got to plan it out. You can't term limit everybody at the same time. You've got to stagger this. Otherwise, you're going to have a little bit of chaos there. But as we eliminate jobs and we have people retire and they take buyouts and things like that, and we eliminate positions, this is a very important concept that needs to go along with it. And so if the United States Congress comes up with a law, wouldn't it be great if it was a constitutional amendment, which is what we really need, so it can't ever be changed, ostensibly, that says all federal workers will be sunset at a certain date. You know, each agency has a different date and time. So again, so it's not completely chaotic. And, you know, existing members of Congress, you are termed out, you know, in, again, some sort of staggered fashion, so you don't have it completely wiped out Congress. But, you know, have this whole thing unfold over 10 years. It would be a beautiful thing. It would change every dynamic in Washington, D.C. almost overnight. And I believe for Congress, one term. That's it. One and you're done. Somebody said 2 and you're through. As soon as you start going more than one, if you only have one term, you remove the entire incentive of a Maxine Waters or Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi. Oh yeah, I'll go to Washington for 2 years, I'll give up my life, and I'll go back to the private sector. That's what the framers wanted. And so it makes it more of a burden to serve than it does a boon. And that's what it should be. It should be, we need to put service, the word service, back into public service. So if Joseph, if we were to implement cuts plus term limits, I think it would accomplish your goal, and we could still have the CIA and FBI in lean form. And there's an argument that we need them both, but we don't need them big and behemoth the way they are now. Craig writes, I really hope Elon and his team would look at the United States Postal Service when they get caught up. I want to show you just one example of how great our postal system works, and then he goes on to write how he ordered something from New Jersey. It was sent to San Antonio. He lives in, by the way, Craig lives in Houston. So it goes New Jersey, San Antonio. Now you'd think it'd go to Houston after that. Instead it goes to Kansas City. So it goes New Jersey, San Antonio, Kansas City, and then hopefully back to Houston. So, that's the Postal Service, right? Okay, here's my solution with the Postal Service. It's in the Constitution that the government is in charge of mail. It doesn't say how. So we privatize it, okay? And again, you can't just drop an axe to privatize it, but you privatize it, and you do it over a 5-year period, and you tell DHL or FedEx or UPS, make a bid, and maybe you divide it up regionally between the three, I don't know. And you have maybe still a postmaster general. That's about it. Why would you need any more? Just to kind of overlord and make sure everything is coordinated with these private companies. You bring in Amazon, Jeff Bezos. By the way, how is it, Jeff, that you get something I ordered on Monday to my doorstep on Wednesday? You know, ask the private sector how they do things, and give it to the private sector. It's a very simple solution. Eliminate the federal government's role in these. The Postal Service is upside down in many ways, and financially upside down, and largely because of this golden parachute pensions that all the employees have. Carol writes, I grew up in Pacific Palisades, California, and my childhood home was burnt to the ground. Besides the water, hydrants being dry, and vegetation not prepped for safety, it seems like the high winds were abnormal. I've lived in Santa Monica almost 40 years and never seen anything like it. I agree with you. I am a Southern Californian, not living there anymore, but to see a cold Santa Ana, that's a cold Santa Ana. Most of the time, the Santa Anas that produce fires are in the fall, September, October primarily, sometimes into November. That's a hot Santa Ana. It's hot and it's dry, and these winds just start blowing, 70, 80 miles an hour from the east, and then you get a firebug out there, and woof, off it goes. But that doesn't mean that you can't get a cold Santa Ana, and that's what they were dealing with back in January in Pacific Palisades. Do I believe anything nefarious going on? Yeah, I believe there's lunatics in California, and you had a bunch of firebugs out there. I believe that the state government isn't doing its job, and the county is not doing its job clearing brush. The Indians, the left loves the Native American Indians. What did they used to do? They used to burn fields and forests because they had to have what we called forest management. Well, California has no forest management whatsoever. And of course, the diverted water that should be heading to Southern California, that's going out to the ocean, into the Delta, into Northern California, is part of the problem. I don't believe any of these crazy notions and ideas, okay? I do not believe any of that stuff. Fires happen in Southern California. They've never been this severe in my lifetime. They've gotten progressively worse over the years. Why? Some idiot's going to say climate change? No. It's because you have more people living in a dense area, and you have less government involved in terms of coping with that. The only way that government copes with more people living in an area that's surrounded by all kinds of timber and brush is to tax the people more. That's the only solution they have. And then what do they do with the tax money? Who knows? Jer writes, I would like to see accountability for all the commies in the fake regime and the corrupt usurpers in the first Trump administration to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Every person that stole tax dollars also must be held to account, and every cent should be returned with interest. Here, I agree with you. I think it's disgusting, some of the things we're learning and some of the stones that Elon Musk is uncovering. But we all knew about the waste, fraud, and abuse. Those of us who have paid attention over the years knows that it's measurable in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's exactly what Elon is finding out. CBS News poll, YouGov, Trump's overall job rating, 53% approve. Described Donald Trump as, most people said, tough. Trump and his campaign promises, how's he doing? 70% say he's doing what he promised. Trump's overall job rating, 53% approve. So he's got positive marks. And I'm sure this drove this is YouGov is a CBS arm, and they overweight Democrat response here. And so this has got to be, they got to be pulling their hair out at CBS, and YouGov is like, uh-oh, this isn't supposed to happen. Trump administration's program to deport illegals in the U.S., 59% approve. 59%. Sending U.S. troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, 64% approve. I'm sure they're pulling their hair out. Trump's handling of Israel-Hamas conflict, 54% approve. Okay, so I asked you the questions, and we got hundreds and hundreds of responses. These are your answers, yours now. Do you approve of the job Donald Trump is doing? 99% say yes, okay? Now, this is hundreds of votes. It's not just a couple of people skewing the thing, okay? Trump and his campaign promises. How's he doing? Doing what he promised, 99%. Deporting illegals. Do you approve or disapprove? Overwhelmingly, people approve. Sending U.S. troops to the border. Overwhelmingly, you approve. Trump's handling of Israel-Hamas, 95% approve. Tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada, 98% approve. Again, this is hundreds and hundreds of responses. Elon Musk and DOGE, or Dodge, influence on government should be, here are the answers, there's 4 choices. None, 2%. Not much, 1%. The question is, how much influence should it have on government? Some, 7%, a lot, 90%. So you can see, viewers of the Daily Ledger, the Ledger Report, this program, whatever you want to call it, Grammy's house, overwhelmingly approve of what Donald Trump is doing. And as I said at the onset here, that this is really a once-in-a-lifetime moment. And I think that we ought to embrace it and support Donald Trump. But I think we also have a mission here to put pressure on the Congress and the leadership, the Republican leadership in Congress, and in the House and the Senate, and say, hey, do you see what's happening in the courts? The MO is we know what the MO is of the radical Democrats, the Marxists, and that is to use our system against ourselves. And so they're using the courts. They use the courts to attempt to stop Donald Trump and his agenda. They use the courts to try and put Donald Trump in jail. They use the courts to hurt Americans, like the January 6th tourists, because that's what most of them were. They were tourists inside the Capitol. I still don't understand why walking through an open door at the Capitol is a crime. Can somebody explain that to me? But that's why some of these people were convicted and went to jail, because they walked through an open door in the Capitol. I thought we owned that house. And by the way, that was the mentality that day. I know it was, even though I wasn't there. This is our house. We deserve to get in it. And I think most people were respectful. They did it, without asking. There's no doubt about it. But we're witnessing a moment in time that we will never witness again, ladies and gentlemen. We will never witness this again. People say, what about J.D. Vance? It's not going to happen. There's one Donald Trump, and the team of Donald Trump and Elon Musk is again, you will never see that again. Nothing close. So this is a moment in time to go full court pressure on the federal government to reduce the size and scope, eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and tell Congress to get its act in gear, because as I've said 100 times, Donald Trump cannot do this alone. Thanks for watching. I'm Graham Ledger, and remember, evil can only prevail when good, like you, is silent.